Hi everyone, this is Farmer Anique from PV School Gardens, and today we're going to be learning about Rancho Los Palos Verdes. As you learned last year in 3rd grade, the Tongva Gabrielino natives were the first to live on this land. So that Native American tribe, they inhabited most of Los Angeles. In the 1700s, Spain, they sent out an expedition to claim land here in Alta California, and they did this by building missions all up the coast of California, and also by granting land to private Spanish individuals. Okay, so shortly after the Los Angeles mission was established in 1781, the boundaries for the Rancho San Pedro were also established in 1784. So Rancho San Pedro used to include Rancho Palos Verdes and Rancho Cerritos. So it was just a huge parcel of land that later got divided into Rancho San Pedro, Rancho Los Palos Verdes, and Rancho Los Cerritos. So what is a rancho? A rancho is a large farm in California. They were large farms in California that were owned by a private individual. So the private individual that owned Rancho Palos Verdes was originally Manuel Dominguez, and it got passed on several times and divided until it finally was sold to Frank Vanderlip in 1913 and became what we know today as our home. As we said, ranchos are farms, and in farms you can do lots of things. You can raise animals, you can grow vegetables, and all kinds of different crops, and that is what happened here in Palos Verdes. It started off as a cattle ranch. So they had lots of cattle here. They grew tons of different vegetables over time, and it was really a mix of two different cultures. It was a mix of the Spanish culture that came in and the original native Tongva culture that already was here, and they taught each other several things. So right here I wrote down some examples of some different herbs that were brought in by both cultures. So for example, priests, they were pretty avid gardeners. So what they brought with them were a lot of medicinal and culinary herbs. So they brought in mustards, and you might be familiar with the word mustard, not only as something you put in your food, but also mustards that grow on our hillsides here in PV. There's tons of mustards. They're tall, they have these yellow flowers, they grow all up the hills, and they are invasive. And they are probably originally from the mustards that Europeans brought long ago. Another example of an herb is marjoram that was brought by Europeans, as well as thyme. That is also a European herb that the priests brought in. Then we have the Native American herbs that already existed here, and the Native Americans were nice enough to show the Spanish how to use these properly. So they introduced them to epazote, to the poppy flower, and to sage. Okay, so on the farms, they grew several vegetables. I'm going to name a few just right here on my list. They grew corn, they grew beans, they grew squash, they grew herbs like we talked about before, and they grew peppers. Some of these were native vegetables from the Americas, and some of them were brought over from Europe. Either way, they were all grown here, and they were used in different ways. So corn can be used fresh or dried, right? We've all had corn pop, which can be fresh. And they've had tortilla chips or tortilla tacos, right? Tacos with tortillas. That is made from dried corn. So all the vegetables I just named can be used both fresh and dried. And this was very, very important in the rancho times because they did not have stores where they can easily access stuff whenever they wanted. And they did not have refrigerators where they can keep their food fresh for a long period of time. So drying their food really helped them preserve it for longer, especially in the season where they couldn't grow these vegetables. They also dried beans, they dried squash, they dried their herbs, they dried their peppers, and squash dried actually can have several different uses. So gourds is a specific type of squash, And gourds are usually used not for eating, they're usually used for some kind of purpose or for being ornamental, right, decorating your tables. But there's different squash. One is called, gourds, they're called loofah, a loofah squash, which is used as a loofah. If you've heard of loofah, to wash your body, to clean stuff. And then there's some gourds that are kind of shaped like a light bulb. And if you cut that in half, that can serve really handy as a ladle for your food. Or maybe a maraca, because you can shake it and make music. And then there's gourds that are round that can be used as bowls. So gourds, when they dry, they get really hard and they serve perfect as utensils. Okay, so now that we learned all about the rancho, let's head out into the garden and plant a rancho garden. Okay, so now we're gonna plant our rancho garden, and today our rancho garden is inspired by a very traditional Mexican dish, I guess you can say, which is salsa. So we're gonna make a salsa garden, and for salsa you definitely need some tomatoes, you need some onions, you need some cilantro, some peppers. So that's what we're gonna get into here. So here I already have some tomatoes. These are little baby tomatoes. You can grow your tomatoes directly into the garden bed by putting the seeds in, or you can grow them indoors. So these were grown outside of the garden bed, and then when they got to a good size, we transplanted them into the garden bed. So that's what we have. I have about 3 in this space. They're about a little over maybe 18 inches apart each. You want to give them a good amount of space because they get pretty big. So that's a tomato. I would recommend using a tomato that's good for slicing. So this one I have here is a red Siberian. You could also do like a Roma, something that's good for slicing, not like a cherry one, right? It'd be really hard to chop up a bunch of cherry tomatoes into a salsa. So pick a good sized tomato. And now that we have our tomatoes down, let's do the next biggest thing, which is tomatillo. So I didn't mention this in my list before, but tomatillo is very essential in salsa. It's used a lot for green salsa, chile verde, and we definitely want this in our garden. Gives our salsa very good flavor. So this is a tomatillo verde. So it's a green tomatillo. It could also be purple. There's some purple varieties. And the seeds are really, really, really tiny, if you guys can see that. They're really tiny. And because we already have 3 tomatoes in here, we don't have much space. So I want to do maybe squeeze in 2 tomatillo plants. So it says here to do about a group of 3 seeds. And I'm just going to squeeze them in between my tomatoes. Just have them grow crazy in between my tomatoes. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 seeds. As you can see, I didn't make a hole for it. I just kind of sprinkled them in one area on top of the soil, and now that they're there, I'm just gonna pat gently. I don't want to push too hard. They're really tiny seeds, so when you have really tiny seeds, you do not need to bury them really deep because they will have a hard time finding their way back up. And now I'm gonna do another 3 on this side, so it is symmetrical. So just sprinkle them on the top where I want them, and then just pat it gently. Okay, so now that I have my biggest veggies planted, I'm gonna go next. So as you can see, I have my biggest veggies in a row in the middle, right? I want them all together in the middle. Then I'm gonna do the next ones on the edges. And my next biggest vegetable or fruit, I guess you can say, is peppers. So I already have some young pepper plants in here. This is a habanero pepper. So I have 1, 2, 3 peppers in here, and on this side I'm gonna mimic what I did on that side. So I have 3 there, so I'm gonna do 3 here, but this time I'm not doing habanero. I'm gonna do a bell pepper. Okay, so jalapeno is the most typical pepper for a salsa if you want to get a little bit spicy, but if you wanted to get even more spicy, you could do a habanero. If you don't like spice at all, you can do a bell pepper. So that's what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna do some bell peppers. And let's see, it says here to do about, I'm gonna do about the same that I did with the tomatillo. I'm gonna do about 3 seeds, right? We like to do more than 1 seed in each planting, each hole, just because sometimes a seed doesn't work, right? Not all seeds are created equal. There's some good seeds and there's some bad seeds. So I'm gonna put 3 just to make sure that at least one of them comes up. If more than one comes up, then I can just thin it out. I can take some of them out because we don't want more than one plant growing in one place. 1, 2. Now we'll do 1, 2, 3. So I spaced them out similar to what I did with my tomatoes because they can also get pretty big. Okay, next I'm gonna do onions. We need onions for salsa. I'm gonna do some onion seeds. These are a yellow onion bulb. See, there's different kinds of onions. Some are bulbs, some are bunching onions. So make sure that you are paying attention to what your seed package says. So this is a bulb onion, it's yellow onion, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a few seeds. It's okay to plant a lot of onions in a bunch because you can always separate them out later in the season. So it's okay to put maybe like 5 or 6 in one spot, and actually I'm gonna put them in between my tomatoes. So I put tomatoes, I put peppers, now I'm gonna put my onions in between. So I'm gonna kind of alternate. So there's my onions. I'm gonna do another set right here, then another set right here. Last thing I want to plant is cilantro. So cilantro is gonna give the salsa a lot of flavor. It's very, very necessary for salsa. And this is an herb. It does not get as big as peppers or tomatillos or tomatoes or even onions. So I can really get away with sprinkling these all along the edges kind of my tomatoes, and they will grow in between all the other stuff I planted. So I just sprinkled them, and we'll just have cilantro growing in between all of our larger plants, our tomatoes, our peppers, our onions. And now our salsa garden is ready to grow. Okay, everyone, make sure that you are watering your salsa garden. Come out and check it every day. Make sure you plant it in a place where you have access to water, right? You don't want to have to carry a big bucket of water. So make sure you're close to a hose, you're in the sun where all your plants are going to get lots of energy from the sun, and come out and check it every day. I like to check the soil just by putting my finger in, and if it feels moist down deep in the soil, then I will leave it out for another day. I won't water until it starts feeling dry deep down in the soil. If it's dry on the top, that's normal, right? The sun hits it and it dries out. But if it's dry deep down in there, that's when you need to make sure that you're watering your plants. Okay, everyone, so thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Make sure to follow us on PB School at PB School Gardens on Instagram, and to check out our website, pbschoolgardens.org.